Hi, Hiltonian here. This video, or maybe pair of videos if I split it up, is going to be about making a Damascus knife. Now, I learned how to make Damascus pattern welded steel in 1981 from the excellent Darryl Meyer. Now, what I learned from him back then was a pretty standard method for making pattern welded steel, where you stack it, forge weld it, draw it out, cut it, stack it, forge weld it, and so on, and then take that billet of parallel layers and modify it, twist it, cut into it, grind it to get a pattern. This process is going to be Mosaic container Damascus, which I've never done before. This is going to be my first time. And Mosaic container Damascus is when you take a piece of square tubing, the container, cap one end, and take small strips of stainless and non-stainless steel. In this case, stainless 15N20 and non-stainless 1095. And I will arrange those strips in a pattern in the container, cap the other end, forge weld it, draw it out, and then I'm going to four stack it 2 by 2, forge weld it again, draw it out, and then cut it to expose the end pattern that will then become the side of the blade. Well, it'll all become clear during the video. Now, what I'm going to be making is a blade for what's known as a billet knife. A friend of mine, enamored of all things Scottish, is interested in making a billet knife. And a billet knife is exactly what it sounds like. It's a tapered, generally quite often single-edged, sometimes double-edged dagger blade, but always dagger sort of shaped. And the grip is entirely made out of wood, and the guard is 2 balls. So it's essentially, you've heard of double entendres. The billet knife is a single entendre. I mean, it's just obvious. But it's a classic 17th, 18th century style of knife. And so that's what I'm going to make, a single-edged billet knife blade, about 9-10 inches long. Wish me luck. Oh, one other thing. The first bits about putting the first mosaic together, I neglected at the time to actually take video of it. So it's going to be a series of photographs at the very beginning. Sorry, that's the way it is. But then it will switch to video after that. Well, I chiseled the end off. It had started to break off, and it looks like I've got a solid mass in there. The billet is now down to about 1.25 inches from 1.5 inches, and it's 14 inches long instead of 12. So I think we got a reasonable weld on that. We'll see. Now I got to cut it off, cut the box off of it. Here's where I'm at in my Mosaic Damascus building experiment. I've gotten to what I call the butter pat stage, but let me back up a little bit. So I started with a bunch of strips of 15N20. I think this is all 15N20 here. And also 1095 steel. 15N20 is a stainless steel that you actually will see used in bandsaw blades for lumber mills. And also 1095, which is a pretty straight ahead 95 points of carbon, straight carbon steel. That is 95 1/100ths of 1%, almost 1% carbon steel. It's kind of like file steel. So I cut a bunch of these strips, and I made a pattern in the of alter. You can see the red is one type and the black is another of these strips. And originally I was going to put a letter in the middle, the letter H, but I screwed up and I made the I mistook some 15N20 for 1095, and it turned into a minus sign in the center of this. So I was like, okay, we're going to double down, and I'm going to take this. See, originally I stacked up those strips inside a piece of square hollow tubing and lined it with stainless steel foil so it wouldn't stick to the tubing, and sealed it up, welded a handle on it, drilled a little hole in so it could vent, and put a little piece of paper towel in one end to use up the oxygen inside. And then I hammer welded it. I forge welded it in my power hammer, and then cut it off and pulled that out. Then I forged that piece down to 3/4 inch square using a thickness jig on the power hammer. And then I cleaned off a couple of sides of each one of those and stacked it 2 by 2 into another billet and forge welded that inside another box. Didn't forge that down as much. Put an 1.25 inch spacer in the power hammer and forged it down to that dimension. And then put it in my bandsaw and cut out these butter pats, is what I call them, at an angle so as to expose the pattern on the end. And if I can find it, I can find it. I'll put in a little picture of the etching of the end pattern there. And so now I've got it so I've exposed the ends, exposed the pattern in the end of the bar, and I've got all these little butter pats that I've laid out end to end here. So I'm going to put a strip of the stainless underneath, lay these out, MIG weld them, little dots of MIG weld to there, put another strip on top, put that on top, MIG weld all along, and then weld a handle on it, and then do another forge weld. Maybe I might even weld a sides in there to really box it in, but then do another forge weld, and then I'll actually have the material with the pattern recurring along the side of the blade stock. So that's where I am right now. We'll see how this forge weld goes. It's a gamble every time.